I'm Cynthia James, and this network is about changing lives one woman at a time. Welcome to Women Awakening. I'm your host, Cynthia James, and I believe that this is an extraordinary time on the planet. And I believe that women are being called to step into their greatness in powerful ways. And that's why I created this podcast. We've now interviewed close to 250 women around the world who are change makers. They're healers, they're teachers, they're entrepreneurs, and they are way showers. They're not, special. What they are is that they are people who've decided to bring their gifts to the planet in an extraordinary way. We do these every week, and we're on all the platforms: iHeart, Spreaker, Spotify, iTunes, video on YouTube. Just look for Women Awakening with Cynthia James. Subscribe, share the videos with your friends. I mean, there has not been one woman that has not inspired me and left me in awe. So today I have someone new to me, and her name is Leah Dunlap. She's an intuitive business architect with 25 years of experience guiding leaders to push past their upper limits so they can transcend doubt, find their purpose, and step into their own divine path. And she's done that around the world. She's inspired programs and practical services that have helped thousands of clients, and listen to this, in over 76 countries. She aligns their unique life purpose and their business genius and the highest life vision. And she combines intuitive knowing and practical leadership and experience to help clients push past those upper limits, and all the while holding them accountable to bring the big vision on their heart to life so that they can create impact, the impact that they were born to make. Leah, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me, Cynthia. I'm excited to speak with you today.
Well, me too. And but I want to start with how you grew up. There is a misconception that people just kind of step into their dharma and are ready to go, but not realizing that we've all had a journey of evolution. So, what's yours been?
Oh, thank you. Yes, I agree. There are so many stories, and I appreciate you asking this question because it has been a journey. To look at me today, you might not know this, but I actually started out with a significant lack of understanding about my gifts and my powers because the family that I grew up in, it didn't resonate with them. That wasn't who they were. As an adopted person, I literally felt like an other in my family for a very long time. So it took a long time for me to really own what I thought was a problem as a gift, right? I thought was making me wrong was actually what was making me exactly right for where I needed to be and what I needed to do in the world. And so my journey started off really rocky. And for many years, I tried to be the good daughter and do all the right things, and everything everybody was telling me was supposed to be the good and right way to be successful. And probably for the first, I would say, 30 years of my life, that was my trajectory. However, I was very unhappy if I was honest with myself, right? And so it came to a point when the moment of truth for me happened was when I kept going back to the corporate world and all the things I was supposed to be doing, all the while my heart was just really begging me to be more fully who I am, to share my gift as an oracle and an intuitive, and to help people find their purpose. That has always been very clear to me. And so one particular day, I was working as a sales rep. I was working in the offices, and I was having to travel around in the city. And in this one particular day that I got a really full on, what I like to call a two by four moment, where the universe said, okay, that's enough. You've got to step more fully into this. You have to be who you really are. And that was that day I drove across a bridge during rush hour traffic, which in my area, that's hours of sitting in traffic. And all of a sudden I felt this sharp pain in my shoulder. I started to sweat, I couldn't breathe and I started to panic. And I'm in the middle, literally on the middle of a bridge, heading back to the office to check out for the day. And instead of just getting off the bridge and turning around and going home, I went all the way to the office. I paced in front of my manager's glass door, and he called me in, and I said, "I think I'm having a heart attack." And he's like, "What are you doing here?" And no, I don't suggest this to anybody. I drove myself home and I called my husband on the way and he's like, "Get over here," so he could take me to the hospital. And while it wasn't, there was a lot of medical stuff that was going on for me, it wasn't a heart attack. And what I learned later was it was that calling of like, enough. You have to stop trying to live in a world you don't belong in anymore. And you have to do what your work is. You have to do your purpose. And so during that process of recovery, it became really clear to me that I wasn't going back, which meant I had to really embrace everything I really was. And I had to give everything over to it. So that was my journey, was like, it wasn't easy. I always kind of did it on the side. Some of you might be hearing this and thinking, oh yeah, you just kind of use your passion or your purpose a little bit to kind of salve yourself. But I fully embraced it. I jumped into it at that point, and I really said, this is who I am. I have all these skills, I have all these talents, but I also have this amazing gift that can help people to find their own way. And I'm going to give it everything I've got to do that. And that was in 2008. And, we're many years from that now. But that was really the biggest impact of my journey, was like to really step onto this path fully, realizing that what I need to do is here to help other people understand who they are, what they need to do, and how they can do that in a more aligned, ease-filled way than I went. And their path can be much more brilliant and full of prosperity and also full of purpose.
Well, what an incredible story, and what I've noticed in the women that I've interviewed is that so many of us felt like, what are we doing in this family? What are we doing in this experience? Because this is not fitting with who I've come here to be. And
Right.
and I also find it interesting that you made that leap in 2008, which was a very interesting time economically. It, but that thing about surrender, and I
Yes.
want to talk about your work, but I really want to talk about surrendering to the gifts that you've been given that nobody else has, and you may not know how to bring them, but you have to surrender to it to allow it to emerge.
Absolutely. And for me, what I recognized was just by letting go of this external expectation of what was called success, and listening more to what was really calling out from inside of me to be born, I was able to kind of lean into that. Now, it certainly was scary. I'm not going to pretend it wasn't. That first day, as you said, it was not exactly the best timing. But I knew, right? I knew that I had to let go of everything. And I often say to my clients, you have to let go of the vine you are clinging to now so you can reach the next one. That next branch is always going to be a little further away than you want it to be. And then in between, I think is when, as you were saying, I think that's when we trust. That's when we have that connection to our center, our source, our psychic, I'm going to say psychic nesting, like that internal side of you that knows the truth all the time. And we can tap into that because that's tapped into source. And so for me, that's really what it was. I really started becoming more driven from that perspective of like what my choices were, how I was going to be. It wasn't easy, but it was more and more fulfilling the more and more I did it. And that's like, to me, that was the thing that really made it say, like, oh, yeah, of course. Of course, if I listen to that guidance, of course, if I trust myself and I trust that I'm being divinely guided, then I can take that next step, even if it's scary, even if I don't really know what's going to happen next. So for me, that is what it's about. It's aligning to that over and over and over again with every choice you make.
Yeah. And I'm really curious about your you called it oracle, intuitive knowing, psychic ability. So did you have a mentor or someone that helped you develop it, or did you just surrender and keep opening so that you could see what the gifts were and how you might deliver them?
Right. So I am some I would say both fortunate and unfortunate in that I've always known that this gift existed for me, and I didn't really have anybody growing up around me like that was like that. So I never really understood it until I got older. And I didn't have mentors necessarily about my gifts, but what I did was I had really important reflectors that showed me that what I was feeling and experiencing was real and that I could trust it and that I could use it. I think once there was a woman that when I was in hypnotherapy school, her name was Marlene Mulder. She was amazing. I kind of a joke. She was like a female Yoda. She had this presence about her where she just would say a sentence and you were like, oh, yes, of course that's true, right? Like just her energy was so amazing. And one time she told me, she walked by me one morning in one of our classes, and she looked at me, she says, you're hypnotized by your hair, and then walked away. And I was like, what does that mean? Right? And what I realized is like for me all my life, because I happened to grow up in a all white family, long hair, long blonde hair, blue-eyed family. And my hair, of course, if you're listening to this, I have very curly afro hair. And it was such an interesting, like just a little tidbit that she dropped. But what it did was it allowed me to kind of reflect back. Like, what does that mean to me? And I feel like while I haven't had people who specifically said, oh, you're an oracle and this is what that means, and this is how that's done. Um, I think my journey was more about owning because I started recognizing this gift when I was 14 years old,
Mhm.
right? And I had no one around me. But I knew it was real at that age because of what experience I'd had. I saw my first full body apparition and I was like, okay, now I'm seeing this. But when I saw it, what was interesting was that I remembered then all of the other times I had seen and known things, and my parents and my family were like, oh, it's just imaginary. You have imaginary friends, or, it's just a dream. It's not real. And so when I was 14 and it happened and I was alert and I was old enough to know, I was like, no, this is a real thing that's happening to me. And so I think I took my own counsel at that point because I had no one else to talk to. And I just learned to engage in it in a way that felt good to me, that was helpful. I always used it to help my friends and other people that I knew. And so I always had that experience of it being at least internally normal to me. But I really needed someone outside of me to say, and this is why, and this is how. And Marley Mulder was definitely one of those pivotal people in my life who said, now this is amazing. What you're capable of, who you are, is needed in the world. So, I had that encouragement to continue to develop that skill and lean into it.
Yeah, well, I mean, you said earlier, if it's yours, you're going to go anyway, whether you know what you're doing or not.
True, true,
I
absolutely.
want to know, you call yourself an intuitive business architect. Describe that to the audience.
Yes. Well, the other thing that's important for me and was important for me when I did step away from the corporate world was I had spent all this time in sales and marketing and operations, and I had kind of risen to the higher levels in the organizations. And so I knew things and I understood things and I had these skills around business. So part of me was like, well, I have like all of these talents. How can I, utilize them? And then I have this gift. And at first, when I kind of threw up my shingle and I started working as a hypnotherapist and using my intuitive gift, what was amazing to me is that the universe kept sending me people that happen to have business problems. And then they were like, I'm like, oh, well, then we can talk about the practical side. We can talk about strategy. We can talk about like hiring and things like that. And all of a sudden I saw how it could be woven together and how my intuitive gifts could help me show and work with clients around their businesses and what they were creating. And then by helping them understand their own purposes, I was able to basically architect with them that vision and that dream of what they wanted their business and life to be. And so that's how it became known as the intuitive business architect because I could help them lay out a plan for that vision by using my intuitive gifts and my knowledge from my past experience, with over like 20 some years in different corporate titles and different corporate endeavors.
It's so interesting that nothing's ever wasted. Whatever, wherever we are, whatever we're doing, whatever we're learning, it's not wasted. I mean, I too was in corporate America, and when I started doing other things, it was like, oh, I learned how to do that over there. So you have a book called The Power Plan. Tell me what that is and what's the purpose of that book?
Thank you for asking. So the purpose of the power plan, it was a divinely inspired book. When I went through a portion of my journey where I had left my first husband, I was walking on the streets with 53 cents in my pocket, and the oracle just kind of sounded off with me like, "This is not the way your life was meant to be." Like I was on the streets, literally just a few cents in my pocket, wearing the clothes that I walked out of my life with, and I was like in the lowest point probably in my whole life. But what happened next was that the oracle said, this is not where it ends, but this is not how it's meant to be. And I was given the steps to get me from there out of that situation and back not only on my feet, but back on the right path. And so I started writing these things down. I started following these practices. And so I created this book after the fact because what I started doing was just sharing in small groups. And the oracle came back and said, this needs to be out to more people. You need to reach thousands of people. And I was like, I'm just little old me. How do I do that? I'm like in this little tiny town. I don't know how I'm going to reach all these people. And so it was like, write the book. So then I wrote the book based on the program that I had already been running for a few years. And so then we did an online program, we did the book so that we could reach more people. And what it does is it walks you through 6 simple steps anyone can take, no matter where you are in your life and your journey right now, to bring you to more alignment for where you're meant to be. And so I do this still now. I included in my current program called the Limitless Life Club. But more importantly, I wanted anyone to be able to get their hands on it. And that's truly how I reached out to people in 76 countries. And the book has gone international that way. So people can have it, follow along. And I love getting stories from people when they're like, oh my gosh, I'm like on the third week of this program and I've already had all these amazing things happen to me. I've changed how I am with my husband. I've got a new job. I'm more healthy. Like it's a holistic approach to creating a life that really truly is aligned and purposeful.
Well, I love that. Can you tell us what the 6 steps are for anybody who's listening? Because I want them to go get your book.
Right. So here are the 6 steps, not necessarily in order,
Okay.
but so one of the first steps that I think most people um, kind of overlook when they're doing this. So I'm going to start right here, which is gratitude. So it talks about how to have a gratitude practice, and it's specific to the way that we hold it each day. Then there's also, of course, there's community. So we want to be in alignment with our community. We want to have accountability so that we can really stay on course and watch what we're doing. So we have gratitude and we have accountability and we have the community aspect, which is like finding your flock so you can have that community. There's also, of course, one of the ones that I think if you've heard The Secret or you've heard about manifestation, one of the pieces that I think is always really important is action. So that's another step, of course. And with those steps, we really help you in the book create a pattern, a practice. So it's like you don't have to think about the steps, you just have to follow along with the book, and then the steps become your own practice, right? And then visualization, which so often I think people, when they talk about visualization, they're I realized many years later, when running a program, because I used to run this as a cohort, um, every time I'd say the word visualization, this one particular person would kind of get glossed over. And I finally said, do you understand what I mean by visualization? And she's like, I never understood it. So I'm going to take a second and just say to people who are listening, visualization and the way that I teach visualization might be a little bit different, which is not only to visualize what you desire, but to see yourself inside of the having that desire, right? So if you see yourself or you desire to run a marathon, it's not seeing yourself outside of the picture, but instead seeing yourself crossing the ribbon, right? Breaking through the ribbon on the other side. And a lot of times people just see their visualization or their ideas or their dreams as if they're far away. And when they do that, they leave them in the far away. So this idea of like how we visualize. And so I take people on a deeper journey into each of those aspects so that they can really embrace them. And ultimately it becomes part of their life. You know, once they've done this process enough, those steps become part of their practice of how they live their life.
Yeah, and it's so important. There's so much going on the planet today, and people are feeling concerned, they're
Mm,
feeling confused, they're like, What's my part in it? How do I bring my gifts forward?" So what you're talking about is a roadmap that
yes.
people can use to really step into their own power. And I loved what it said in your it said, move past their upper limits, the things that they think are blocking them. Well, I want to say, okay, so you had 53 cents in your pocket when you left your first marriage. You have another relationship now, correct?
Yes.
And you're running this business.
Definitely. Yes.
So so how do you manage the energy of taking care of you, taking care of the relationship, and taking care of the business?
Oh, that is a wonderful question. I think that's a really important, I think that kind of ties back to the idea, like often people say, like, what's this work-life balance thing about? And I always remind myself, like, what are my priorities? So I definitely start every day with a meditative practice. So there's not a day, and I also end every day with a gratitude practice. So I think those are kind of like, those are the bookends to how I manage in between the day. But I also think that we have to give ourselves a lot more grace, especially as women. I'm just going to say this. We have to give ourselves a lot more grace because we typically do take on a lot more in our lives and our families and things like that. So I will have a practice of priority, right? What is my priority? How do I today do what's mine to do? And then the other part is like letting go and giving myself grace when some of the things I thought I was going to do, what I didn't get to, I think is really important. But really, ultimately, having the grace to just know those things that are most important and in the moment. Right? So we just stay in the day. I like to say, like, just remind myself, be here now. What do I need to do right now? What what is it right now? And sometimes that is like, spending more time in one area of my life than another. Sometimes that is, I also have a preteen, teen kid. Um, so that's a lot of energy as well. So it's like, what is the most important thing that I can give to the situation, to myself? And I will be honest, haven't always been the best at self-care. What, as we say, self-care. But what I've realized over the years is that sometimes beating myself up for not taking care of myself is worse than just moving on to the next day and letting the next day be the thing. So I've learned, I think it's maybe because I've done this for a little while now. My husband and I have been together for 30 years this year. So, we have a way of being together that allows each of us to be whole people. So I get to be a whole person, and sometimes, I'm not great at it, and sometimes I'm phenomenal at it. So I have to give myself the grace of understanding that, there's going to be ebbs and flows, but if I just stay where I am and I practice whatever I can and be aware of my priorities today and right now, then I will be the best me I can in any moment.
Yeah, well, it's so interesting. You and I have a lot in common, and I just find it so wonderful you're sharing. How do people find you and your work?
Well, anyone who's interested can find me at any platform under Oracle on Purpose. So oracleonpurpose.com, of course, is my main site. I have a podcast as well called Oracle on Purpose Podcast. It is also on all of the streaming platforms, so you can always find it there. And of course, right now, if you are interested in like the book or how to take on that vision of creating a limitless life, you can always join us at limitlesslifeclub.org.
Beautiful. Well, Leah, you're just powerful, and I'm so grateful you said yes to your destiny. I would I ask the same last question of every guest. The show is called Women Awakening. What do you think is the most important thing about women awakening on the planet in this moment?
I would say the most important thing about women awakening on the planet right now is that the wholeness of who we are gets to come back energetically and make powerful change in the world. So much of who we are as women is creative, and there is so much available to do and heal and create in the world today that the more that you and I and others like us are stepping into that fullness, truly, we are making an entirely different world every day. The way that we do that. So, to me, I think the most important thing right now is as we awaken to who we are fully, we get to bring all of ourselves and all of our energy and healing into the world, and it definitely needs it today.
Amen. Amen. Amen.
Amen.
Well, thank you so much for being here. You're quite beautiful, and I'm very grateful.
Oh, thank you so much, Cindy. I just really appreciate you and what you're doing and how you're shining a light on people like this in the world.
Thank you. All right, ladies. Here's the thing. I say the same thing every week in a different way. This is your time. There's no more time to play small, pretend you don't know, act like you're not here for a reason, because you know you are. Those intuitive gifts have been encoded in you. And so you can, in any given moment, say yes, and the universe will correspond. I'm so grateful that you're here. I'm so grateful that we have this community and that you are an awakened woman.